Greetings, students from Comms Theory and Research class. This is Professor Theo. I'm shooting this brief video to go over your assignment for the annotated bibliographies. We didn't get a chance to really go over this thoroughly in class, and there were several of you who were missing in class, so you didn't get this assignment at all, even though it's in your syllabus, and it's going to be due on Tuesday after break. I may extend it to Thursday depending on how everyone is doing, but let's shoot for Tuesday after break so we could stay on task. So this assignment is pretty simple. It's just going to take a little time. What you're going to be doing is think about the area of study that you've chosen for your research proposal. And then you're going to research articles that are related to your area of study. For example, since my dissertation was on overcoming the effects of fatherlessness, I need to look at articles that dealt with fatherlessness in general. And there's different people who have done research on different areas of fatherlessness. But what I did was, since my dissertation was specifically on African American males, I would tend to maybe keep my research articles to fatherlessness within the African American community. So what you would basically do is go on to a database that you have access to. So I had access to Bethel's database as well as Regent, where I got my PhD. Right now you probably just have access to Bethel's. So if you go onto Bethel's website and then you click in, type in Bowen Library, or click the link to the library. Once you get to the library, there's going to be some links to a database. I'm just doing it right now to make sure I'm giving you the correct information. So when you go into Bethel's website, you can click search. You type in Bowen Library, then you hit search again. And then a list to come up, click on Bowen Library. And as soon as it opens up, what you have is these tabs, one for one search, Bethel Catalog, databases, e-journals. You can click on either the databases or the e-journals. It's probably best to do the databases. So the e-journals is good. Say if you had a list of articles from certain journals and you wanted to see if Bethel had access to those journals, you would click on e-journal, type in the name of the journal, and then if they had it, you could type in the issue and volume number. But since you don't probably have that information right off the bat, click on databases. And then there's going to be a tab that says major databases. You hit that tab and it says select the database, and you see all these lists of different databases that you have. A good one I would think would be Sage Journals Online, Google Scholar, JSTOR. So I'm just going to click on JSTOR and then hit search database. So what happens is JSTOR database opens up, and if I was to type in fatherlessness, all of a sudden now I get different articles that have been written in their PDFs. Say for example, one of them says fatherless and friendless, factors influencing the flow of English immigrant servants. That's not going to really help me out. So what I may do is to, I'll type in African American fatherlessness. Now there's some stuff that comes up for, some stuff comes up. So one, behavioral differences between African American male adolescents with biological fathers and those without biological fathers in the home. That would be an excellent article. And then you can just click download the PDF and accept the terms and conditions, and you can download those PDFs. So what I would suggest is, before you get started, to create a folder on your laptop that has, you could put it in your like a com theory folder, and then have a folder as far as research for annotated bibliography. That way, as you download these PDFs, you can save and write to that folder. And what you want to do is, oftentimes when you do this research, you can click on the actual article. Before you download it, just click on the link to the article. And when you do that, sometimes you can read the first page of the article or read the abstract of the article, and it's going to let you know if it lines up with some of the things you're thinking about as far as your area of study. And so you're going to find a total of 10 articles. So you probably got to find maybe 15 and narrow it down to 10 that fit. Once you find those 10 articles, kind of peruse the articles, and you're actually going to do annotations for 5 of those articles. So you're going to narrow it down to actually 5 that you're actually going to do annotations for. So let's talk about what an annotation is. And if you go on Canvas, there is a document called Annotated Bib Condensed. It's one of the annotated bibliographies I've done, and I've condensed it down, and I got an A on it, so I think it'll give you a great example of what the format should look like. But basically what you're doing is you peruse the article. You don't have to read this whole article. Sometimes they're 10 to 15 pages, and a lot of the stuff is, a lot of the terminology may be foreign to you if you don't know a lot about research. But you would basically cite the article, and if you see on my annotated bibliography, you would start with the last name, comma, first initial, period, and then the date. And if there's more articles, if there's more authors, you just continue that process. But you see example of how to cite, and then you put down the name of the article, and then the book that you got it from, and if it's a certain volume, you put that down. If there's a certain issue number, you put that down, and then you put down the page numbers. So this is APA, and you see all this on the document I uploaded. Then what I found is the good format is to have 3 very brief paragraphs. These paragraphs can be 5 to 6 sentences long. Because each annotation, I said that you should do about 175 to 200 words per annotation, which isn't that long at all. So maybe 4 to 5 sentences per paragraph. The first paragraph, the way I normally outline it is, I'm going to talk to you about what the study is. So maybe in 1 or 2 lines, I'm going to say, here's what this article is about. Say for my example, my first one, I put the study examines whether e-learning environments can affect the learning outcomes of students with differing styles, including those diagnosed with dyslexia. So that's a summary of what this particular article was about, this research was about. So in 1 or 2 lines, summarize, here's what the research was about. Next, I normally talk about the theory. So whether it was framed by a theoretical framework or whether it had grounded theory, if it was qualitative, I always talk about the theory here. And so I would say for this first example, I put this research is framed by the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, which suggests that information is processed independently, although there's overlap and some other stuff. And so I not only tell you what theory was used, but I can't assume that you know about that theory, so I may give a 1-line description about what that theory normally talks about. And then, if needed, I may expand upon that. So I put this theory proposes that information will be received differently based upon how it's encoded. So that first paragraph basically has 2 things, or really 3 if you count it specifically. What is the research about? So 1 or 2 lines about here's what this research was about. 1 line about here's what the theory was, and then maybe a liner about what that theory talks about. And that's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2, normally I break down some specifics of the study. And I normally start with who were the participants. So for example, if it was a qualitative study where there were 12 people who were interviewed, this is when I would talk about that. I would say that there were 12 participants in this study. The example I have for the very first one on this document says there was 193 adolescent students. So now I'm not just telling you the number of people, but now I'm breaking down if there's anything that's relevant as far as gender or age things of that nature. So if it was 200 college students, or if it was 50 young elementary school students, or 50 women, this is when you're going to normally break down the demographics. So that way, when I read, or when someone reads your annotated bibliography, first paragraph, they read what the study's about. They also read the theories that were used. The second paragraph, now they're starting to learn more about who actually participated within the study. So you talk about who was in the study. So the number of people, and maybe any demographical breakdown as far as gender, race, if any, age group, if any of those things are relevant. Then you, in the same second paragraph, you're going to talk about how was the data collected. So did they take a questionnaire? Were they interviewed? Did they fill out a survey? Was it a focus group? Was the survey done online? Was it done in person? Things of that nature. So anything that's relevant to what instrument was used to collect the data and how that data was collected. Then you want to talk about how the data was analyzed. So this particular example I have for the first entry on my annotated bibliography, it was a quantitative study, and when you analyze quantitative data, you normally use a computer program, and you can conduct different types of analyses. This particular one was called an ANOVA analysis. Now, it doesn't matter if you know what an ANOVA is or not for this particular assignment. All you got to do is read the article, and if the article says that they did an ANOVA analysis, you just say that this was analyzed using an ANOVA analysis. You got to explain what that is. I don't expect you to know what that is. But so you're basically reading this article, and then you're summarizing the article for me. So you want to talk about how was the data collected, and how was it analyzed, and then finally in this same second paragraph, you're going to conclude by talking about what the results were. So what did the results of the study reveal? So recap, first paragraph, what was the study about? What theory was used? And a little about that theory. Second paragraph, who was in the study? Who participated? Their number, their gender makeup, their ethnicity, if any of those things are important. College age versus elementary age. If any of those things are important, you put that in. How was the data collected? What was the instrument used? Was it a questionnaire? Was it survey? Was it online? Was it via telephone? Next, how was it analyzed? If it was an interview, you may say that you had all the interviews were transcribed and then they were coded. All this stuff is going to be in the article. So you tell us how it was analyzed, and finally in that second paragraph, what were the results? Now the last paragraph, the third paragraph, which once again is 4 to 5 sentences long, you're going to critique the research to the best of your ability. And I know since you don't know a whole lot about research, I don't expect it to be too in-depth. But what do you think stood out well about the research? Say, for example, if it was quantitative and they had 1,000 participants, even from qualitative, there's still a lot of participants. You want to note that the author, that the researchers did a great job of having a great deal of participants. If it was quantitative or qualitative, sometimes the average could be 10 to 12, 15 participants. But like I said the other day in class, sometimes you can even have one participant if it's really good stuff. But if you read an article and there's only one participant, that may be something you still want to critique to say, even for qualitative, they probably should have gotten more participants. And so what did they do well? What could they work on in your assessment? Maybe when you look at the participants and there were like 200 participants and it was 150 women to 50 men, but the research itself wasn't necessarily leaning towards something that more appealing to women. It's like a gender neutral research. Yet for whatever reason they had 150 women participating and only 50 men. You may point out that they maybe could have had a better balance as far as gender, or maybe a better balance as far as race in certain issues if they specify those things. So you want to point out, here's what you thought they did well, but here's what you think you could do. And then finally in this, you want to be able to point out that there are some areas that you would think that the studies could be expanded upon. Say, for example, when I did my study on fatherlessness, if someone was to annotate my work, they may say, well, it'd be great in the future if this study could be expanded to include women, black women who did not know their father, or to include white men and women. So think about, when you read the article, what are some ways that you think the research can be expanded upon? What do you think? And it's not to say the research was limited, because the research itself is purposely honed in on a particular area. So this isn't necessarily a critical thing. Now you're saying that in the future, it'd be great to see this research expanded in this way. So one more recap. First paragraph, what was the research about? And what was the theory used, and what is that theory? Second paragraph, who participated? How many participants were there? Were they college age? Were they high school age? What was the ethnic background or gender background? If those things are included, because sometimes they're not included in the article, but when they are included, you may want to put that in this particular section. Also, how was the data collected? Was it questionnaires or surveys? How was the data analyzed? And then finally, what did the results reveal? And then for the last paragraph, here's when you begin to put your 2 cents, your critique. You say, here's what I think was a strong aspect of this research. Here's what I think was a weak aspect of this research that could be expanded upon. And then finally, what future research would you like to see come out of this? All right, so once again, you're going to find those 10 articles. You're going to annotate 5 of them. And what the best way is, you put the articles in alphabetical order as far as the last name of the author. You put that citation first, then your 3 paragraphs. Then the next citation, your 3 paragraphs, and you'll see this in my document. And once you do the first 5 that you think are the most valuable, you would take your next 5, instead of doing annotations for it, just put those citations, and it'll go under the heading other research articles. So you'll see in my document it says other research articles, and then it has 5 citations. And what it's basically saying is, if you had more time, you could annotate those, and also now you would have 10 articles within your area of study that you could begin to work from. And hopefully what will happen is, if you are 100% sure of your study as far as the direction, this is going to give you some more clarity. Or what may happen is, maybe you're a little bit shaky and you may go through and do this assignment and you may decide to go a different route. All those are permissible. And so whatever you do your annotated bibliography on, it doesn't have to be what you're going to do your research proposal on, even though that would be the wisest thing. But for some of you, you may do this annotated bibliography and realize that there's not enough stuff out there, or maybe it's too much stuff out there in your particular area of study, and you may want to go another route. That's all good. So work on this over the break. The document I uploaded is 8 pages long, but 1 page is a title page, and then 2 pages are references, and then another page is some references also. So you're really looking at like 5 pages. So each annotation can be done on one page, and this is single. Actually, this is, did I do double spaced? Yeah, so double spaced, 1 page double spaced per annotation. So the citation is double spaced, and so are the paragraphs. And so you're not looking at a whole lot, like I said, maybe 175 to 200 words per annotation. And so you're looking at a 1,000-word document outside of your citations and things of that nature. So it's pretty simple. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope this video has been informative. Take care and enjoy the rest of your spring break.